One employee said, "I wait all week for the weekend." His coworker asked, "Why?" The employee replied, "So I can relax." The coworker smiled and said, "That sounds nice." The employee sighed and said, "It would be, if I actually relaxed." The coworker asked, "What do you do instead?" The employee replied, "I spend Saturday recovering from work and Sunday worrying about Monday." One employee said, "I wait all week for the weekend." His coworker asked, "Why?" The employee replied, "So I can relax." The coworker smiled and said, "That sounds nice." The employee sighed and said, "It would be, if I actually relaxed." The coworker asked, "What do you do instead?" The employee replied, "I spend Saturday recovering from work and Sunday worrying about Monday." One employee told his coworker, "I need more sleep." The coworker asked, "Why don't you sleep earlier?" The employee replied, "Because I stay up late." The coworker asked, "Doing what?" The employee said, "Trying to relax." The coworker laughed and asked, "From what?" The employee sighed and said, "From work." The coworker asked, "And does it help?" The employee replied, "No, I'm still tired at work." One man looked at his phone and sighed, "My bank account is confusing." His friend asked, "What's confusing about it?" The man said, "It shows money, and then it doesn't." The friend laughed and said, "That's just spending." The man shook his head and said, "No, it disappears too fast." The friend asked, "Where does it go?" The man replied, "Bills, rent, and food." The friend nodded. The man sighed and said, "And somehow, I'm still broke." One guy told his friend, "Being an adult is harder than I thought." The friend asked, "Why do you say that?" The guy replied, "Because I'm always tired." The friend laughed and said, "That's normal." The guy continued, "I wake up tired." The friend nodded. The guy said, "I go to work tired." The friend asked, "And after work?" The guy sighed and said, "I come home tired and then I have to pretend I have energy." One employee told his coworker, "I like coming to work early." The coworker asked, "Why?" The employee said, "So I can relax before everyone arrives." The coworker laughed and asked, "Do you actually relax?" The employee replied, "Yes, for about 5 minutes." The coworker asked, "What happens after that?" The employee sighed and said, "Then I start counting how many hours are left to go home." One coworker asked another, "Why do you always look calm at work?" The guy said, "Because I've accepted my fate." The coworker laughed and asked, "What fate?" The guy replied, "That I'll be here forever." The coworker smiled and said, "That's not so bad." The guy sighed and said, "It is, especially when I remember it's only Tuesday." One employee told his coworker, "I think I work better at night." The coworker asked, "Why at night?" The employee said, "Because it's quiet." The coworker nodded and asked, "So you get more done?" The employee shook his head and said, "No, I just don't feel guilty doing nothing." The coworker looked confused and asked, "What do you mean?" The employee replied, "At night, everyone else is also not working." One employee told his coworker, "I stayed late at work yesterday." The coworker asked, "Did you have a lot to finish?" The employee said, "No, I just didn't want to go home." The coworker looked surprised and asked, "Why not?" The employee sighed and said, "Because at home, I have responsibilities." The coworker asked, "And at work?" The employee replied, "At work, I just pretend." One guy complained to his friend, "My boss told me to have a good day." The friend said, "That's nice." The guy replied, "So I went home." The friend asked, "What happened next?" The guy said, "Now I'm having a great day and probably no job tomorrow." One employee told his coworker, "I love my job." The coworker was shocked and asked, "Seriously?" The employee said, "Yeah, I love leaving it." The coworker laughed and said, "That doesn't count." The employee replied, "That's the only part one enjoy." One guy told his friend, "My job is slowly killing me." The friend asked, "Then why don't you quit?" The guy said, "I can't." The friend asked, "Why?" The guy replied, "Because my job is also the only thing keeping me alive." The friend looked confused and said, "How?" The guy sighed and said, "It pays my bills."
A man went to the doctor and said, "Doctor, I think I have a serious problem." The doctor asked, "What seems to be the issue?" The man said, "I keep imagining that I'm a dog." The doctor looked surprised and asked, "How long has this been happening?" The man thought for a moment and said, "Since I was a puppy." The doctor stared at him silently. Then he said, "Well, I think we should start with some tests." The man nodded and asked, "Can I sit on the couch?" The doctor said, "Of course." The man replied, "I can't, I'm not allowed on the furniture." A man went to a restaurant and ordered a bowl of soup. When the waiter brought the soup, the man said, "Waiter, taste the soup." The waiter said, "Is something wrong with it?" The man repeated, "Just taste the soup." The waiter said, "Is it too salty?" The man said again, "Taste the soup." Finally the waiter said, "All right, where's the spoon?" The man smiled and said, "Exactly," grinning face with smiling eyes. One guy complained to his friend, "My alarm clock ruined my life." The friend asked, "How can an alarm clock ruin your life?" The guy said, "It wakes me up every morning." The friend laughed and said, "That's literally its job." The guy replied, "Exactly, and that's the problem." The friend asked, "Why?" The guy said, "Because every morning it reminds me that I still have to go to work." A student asked his math teacher, "Why do we need to learn math?" The teacher replied, "Because math helps you solve problems." The student thought about it and said, "Then why do math teachers give us so many problems?" The teacher said, "So you can practice solving them." The student sighed and said, "You know, if you stopped giving us problems, we wouldn't need math anymore." Guy told his friend, "I think I'm addicted to my phone." The friend asked, "What makes you think that?" The guy said, "Yesterday my phone battery died." The friend asked, "So what happened?" The guy said, "I had to talk to my family." The friend laughed and asked, "How was it?" The guy said, "They seem like nice people." A teacher asked a student, "Why are you late to school?" The student said, "Because of the sign." The teacher asked, "What sign?" The student replied, "The road sign near school." The teacher said, "What does it say?" The student smiled and said, "It says, school ahead, go slow." A man went to a job interview. The interviewer asked, "What is your biggest weakness?" The man replied, "I'm too honest." The interviewer said, "Don't think honesty is a weakness." The man shrugged and said, "I don't really care what you think. I started a new diet yesterday." The friend asked, "What kind of diet?" The man said, "I only eat healthy food." The friend asked, "How's it going?" The man sighed and said, "It's very hard." The friend asked, "Why?" The man replied, "Because the pizza keeps calling my name."